And you were listening to Season 6 of the award-winning Christian Outdoors podcast with your host, Pete Rogers. This show is being brought to you by Taurus USA, the leading manufacturer for reliable, affordable firearms for personal protection, hunting, and sport shooting. Now, having been a fan and user of Taurus handguns for decades, whether it's my everyday carry G4 or one of the 1911 models, or even one of their incredible hunting revolvers, Taurus is the best handgun on the market today, and you can find out more on how reliable Taurus is at taurususa.com. Today we have up with us Mr. Elliott Stoval, who is the founder and CEO of the Filter Project. And no, this isn't for your HVAC. This is which if you're like most of us, you change every 6 years whether you need to or not. But Elliott has been called by God to do a very important mission of providing clean water access to people who struggle with that. And I'm really looking forward to having him on the show. And Elliott, why don't you just start by telling the audience about who you are, and we'll get into what you do.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for having me again on the show. So, my name is Elliott Stoval. I am the CEO and founder of the Filter Project, and we use a water filter that attaches to a 5-gallon bucket in underserved communities to share Christ with these communities. So, that's our mission, and would love to tell you more about it.
Awkward silence on purpose. He's like, oh no, what did I not say? Everyone, this portion of the show is being brought to you by the most complete first aid kits on the market today. Jump Medic first aid kits are designed by paramedics and EMTs and have everything you need for simple cuts and bruises to full triage in the field. As outdoorsmen and women, we know this not if, but when a medical emergency will occur in the backcountry. And having a proper first aid kit is essential to get you out safely so you can get the proper care that you need. And you cannot go wrong with the Jump Medic kits. Learn how to find the kit that you need from jumpmedic.com. Why? Why the Filter Project?
Well, I ask myself that a lot. I started the Filter Project not too long ago, last year actually. So we've been inception for about 8 months now. And before that, I was selling health insurance. And that kind of definitely wasn't what I saw on my bingo card, was starting the Filter Project and using a water filter. But I guess we can just start from the beginning of where it started. So my mom and dad have always been heavily involved in missions. I grew up in church. So missions and church has always just been a big part of my life. About in February, my mom and dad went to Kenya to look at a ministry that they had been supporting for over a decade, which they do pastoral training and feeding stations and schools and stuff like that over in Kenya in different areas there. And after they returned in April of last year, I had a gentleman named Cristiano, who is a pastor from this ministry, come and teach in our Sunday school class. And he taught a lesson on the call, and the call that Christ makes to us to become Christians, and then the call that he gave us to spread the gospel, the great commandment. And, that was a great reminder. Again, I grew up in church. It wasn't new to me, but it was a good reminder. Later that day at service, my dad texted me and invited me to lunch with Cristiano, which this is kind of where God starts working in this story, or where I kind of saw him start working in the story. He had already started working back in February, because when my mom and dad went to Kenya, they were given a water filter, a life straw. And I'm sure your viewers or listeners are familiar with a life straw. It uses charcoal filters, and it lasts for 2 to 3 weeks. And they were given one of these, and it just kind of started my mind going on water filtration and emergencies and things like that, because I live on a well. And if the power goes out, I don't have water. And so I was trying to figure out a sustainable way to drink my pond behind my house. And I did some research on the life straw, but the problem is it only lasts 2 to 3 weeks. Well, if there's a major power outage or a major emergency, I needed something that lasts longer. And so in February, I found what's called the Sawyer water filter. And I put that in my go bag. Yeah.
Spell that for the listeners.
Sawyer, it's Sawyer. And they're very popular in the outdoor world. You can buy them at REI or Amazon. They're about $50. And they last for over 1 million gallons of water, or 20 plus years for a family. Wow. And so I put that in my kind of go bag that I have February of last year. And then we'll pick back up in April when I met Cristiano. So I was at lunch with Cristiano, and again, I wasn't really supposed to be there. Our pastor was supposed to go, but God made him busy, and I was invited to this lunch. Your listeners don't know me from Adam, but like I told y'all before, I could talk to this cup for 3 hours and have a great time. And so I'm just sitting at this lunch, and me and Cristiano are talking, and my family, my children, my mom and dad are there. But really in that moment, it was just kind of me and Cristiano. And I was asking him about his ministry and what life was like in Kenya. I'd never been to Kenya before. I asked him, I said, are there elephants? Are there lions, giraffes just like walking around on the streets? What's Kenya like, Cristiano? And I said, what does a Tuesday look like in your book? You wake up, then what? And he described his day like, which I found most people in the world start their day, of gathering water for their family. Here in America, we're blessed that we can, most places can turn on the faucet and drink directly out of the faucet. And we don't really even think about gathering or cleaning water. It's just something that we're used to. And so I was like, well, Cristiano, that's great. Where do you get your water? And he says, well, we get it from a spring that is fed, and it comes down this creek, and we pick it up. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't sound too clean. So how are you cleaning your water? What kind of filter do you use? Are you using chemicals? Again, from my experience back in February, I kind of already had these ideas in my head about cleaning water. And he humbly replied and said, sometimes we boil the water, but a lot of the times we don't have the resources and the financial wherewithal to purchase the fuel to boil water. We use our fuel to cook our food. And at this point, I was kind of puzzled because, again, if you're not cleaning the water, Cristiano, you're drinking dirty water. Help me understand that. And he said, yeah, we do. We drink the dirty water a lot. And I'm like, and so now I've got all these thoughts in my heads about, drinking dirty water and his family. And I'm like, well, don't you get sick, Cristiano? Typhoid, dysentery, and other bowel issues, and worms. And he says, yeah, we do. Actually, I have 6 children, but only 5 of them are living. One of his sons died before the age of 1 because of a heart condition that he had gotten from his mother taking medication to cure her typhoid from dirty water before she knew she was pregnant. And at this point, guys, I just couldn't get past what the rest of his day looked like, because he didn't have the simple dignity of drinking clean water, something we take for granted. And at this moment at lunch, I heard God's voice, and I heard, fix this. And I've heard a lot of people say they hear God's voice. And before this, I kind of thought maybe they're having voices in their heads, but it was audible. I heard, fix this. And a lot of the times, I believe when we get direction from God or urging from the Holy Spirit, we don't really know what to do with that and kind of where to go. And some people will, and I was guilty of this a lot of times in my life, just kind of brush it off and move out. But it was so profound that I needed to do something. And so I told Cristiano, I said, hey, man, there's this filter. I'm going to purchase you one. It's $50. Again, to the average American, $50 is, a night out. Well, not anymore, but a dinner, maybe a tank of gas.
Tank of gas, yeah.
But it's something that's not a big deal for us. $50 is not a big deal. And so I purchased a Sawyer water filter. Again, this is what it looks like. It attaches to either a 5-gallon bucket, or here for demonstration purpose, it can attach to a water bottle, and it's completely portable.
Can you put it onto a garden hose?
I guess you could, but it specifically works using gravity, or as I have in this application, more of a squeeze application. And
So does it fit on different size bottles? How does that? Or is that screw on?
It has to fit on a certain, more of the thicker kind of water bottle look to it.
Okay.
But again, this one's main application, it attaches to a hose that it comes with, which attaches to, again, a 5-gallon bucket or some sort of water container. So I bought this for Cristiano, and Amazon got it to where he was staying in a couple days. And at this point, I kind of thought I'd check the box for listening to Christ, listening to the voice of God. I fixed this for Cristiano. Now I'm done. And I'm going to go back to being a dad, a husband, and an insurance sales guy. And so that is that's the beginning of really why I started this, was because of Cristiano. And that's kind of where I heard God speak to me. And 10 days following giving this filter to Cristiano, I got a video from Cristiano, from him and his family in Kenya. And it's got his wife and his children and some of the adopted children that he has, just thanking me for this water filter and for providing clean water to him and his family. And for your listeners, Kenya is 9 hours ahead of Central Standard Time. And so it was 3 a.m. I wake up and I look at this video from Cristiano, and I was just moved. Just the simple fact of clean water meant so much to him and his family. And from that point on, I knew I had to do more.
Yeah.
And so that's why the filter project, and that's kind of its early beginnings.
Well, I think one thing you mentioned that I think is cool is that you pursued it by asking questions, right? I feel like there are so many needs in this world that we probably could meet if we would be a little bit more curious and just ask people to articulate what their needs are. You know, we see that in the life of Christ, you know, multiple times. He asks people questions, you know, what is it you require of me? What do you want? And then he meets the need. But I think also with that, you think you meet the need of one person, and God all of a sudden unlocks this, whatever it is, right? To where now you are living on mission and wearing a shirt that says the Filter Project. So no, that's awesome. That's great. That's great.
So how Elliott, how big is the issue of dirty water? Explain that to our North American listeners.
Yeah. So after I got this video from Cristiano, I was like, maybe this is bigger deal than just Kenya or Cristiano or his community. And so I started doing a little research, and like, you know, facts out there, everybody's got a different number, but the number that I stick to is 2.2 billion people in the world do not have access to clean, safe drinking water. People have access to water, but it's not clean. And that's almost a third of the planet doesn't have access to clean water. So it's a huge issue. Over 800,000 people die every year because of dirty water, and 300,000 of these are children under the age of 5. So dirty water is the #1 killer of children around the world. There's other statistics that say guns and stuff like that, but it's something as simple as dirty water.
Yeah.
And like you had said previously, you know, God starts opening up, and, you know, we want to ask questions. And me and my wife Katie, she's my right hand in this, and she's a great partner who stood by my side and walked through this with me. But we were on our porch after I'd gotten this video from Cristiano, and we were talking, and she was just like, it can't be this simple. it can't be as simple as a $50 water filter to bring clean water to people. We've got to be missing something. But through our research, it's not. It's really just it's a money issue and getting filters or access to clean water to people.
Yeah. Now I heard you on another interview, and you were talking about why the filters versus digging wells, say, in these communities. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So when I tell people about what I'm doing, they say, well, why don't you just dig wells? Because everybody's heard of these well projects that are out there. And Charity Water is one of the largest water organizations who's digging wells, or they fund to dig wells. And those are great things. Wells are needed in places. But what we've found is the problem with wells is, number one, 50% of all wells that are dug are inoperable after 2 years for multiple reasons, whether that's mechanical, whether that's they dry up, all these issues. Also, wells are really expensive. Just first of all, you have to find the water and get somebody to locate this water, the pocket of water. Then you have to drill. And through my research, I've talked to several different people who they started with digging wells, but they drill down and they miss the pocket. Well, there's money out the window, so they got to re-drill. And so a well across the globe to dig the well is anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000. Plus, it's the maintaining of the well. There's also things called sand filters, which look like vases, like clay vases with a bunch of sand in it, kind of like a pool in the backyard that used to use sand filters, which a lot of them still do. But imagine walking around trying to give out hundreds of pounds of sand to people. And yeah, I mean, you'd get a lot of mussels and it's a lot of sand. But the other issue is they don't last as long. Right. And like I alluded to, this filter, it uses what's called hollow microfiber technology, which is the same technology in medical dialysis machines. And it'll last over 1 million gallons of water or 20 plus years. It just takes a simple back flush with this syringe. You suck up clean water and then you blow the clean water back out to clean the straws out. And so financial, that was one reason, because we can buy these and get them in country in Kenya for roughly $29. And so there's that. And two, my goal is not just to bring clean water to people. That was the original goal with Cristiano. But the Filter Project's number one goal is to share Christ and the living water with people.
Amen.
We just use the water filters to do that. And so it allows us, and we'll get into it further, how we do this and our follow-ups and our missionaries, but it allows our team in country, our indigenous missionaries, to create a long-term, lasting, personal relationship with each family, where they welcome this family to a distribution, they welcome them at the distribution, and then they have the 3 follow-up visits with this family. And so, again, it's intentionality to share Christ with these families. The third reason, and again, we'll get into it more, but every one of our filter has a barcode on it. And we're able to use geographical information systems and GPS to track every filter that we've put out. And so it allows for a donor transparency and accountability, and allows me in Tennessee to watch what's being done in Kenya and in other countries as we expand.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to touch on the finance. I had my calculator out doing some math while you were talking there, Elliott, and you said a well cost about $12,000 and your filters are about $29. That's 413 filters you can provide for one well. Right. That's 413 individual families that can use this for 1 million plus gallons. Right. And they can use it right there from their home. So there's a lot from the people looking at the financial side of it. There's a big benefit to that.
There is. And again, what we found in a lot of areas of Kenya and around the globe is people are transient. they don't stay in one place. They might go to the big city of Nairobi and then pack up for a couple months and go back to their tribe or their original home. Well, they can take this with them. They don't have to hope that there's clean water in the next village they go. They can take that 5-gallon bucket with them.
So you said you've been doing this about 8 months now. So how many filters have you gotten over there so far?
Yes. So last year we were able to put out. After I helped Cristiano with that one filter, I just felt God leading me to do more. And Cristiano has disciples that he trains up for 18 months and then sends them out to other parts of Kenya to grow churches. And so I called my dad and I was like, Dad, I want to do more for Cristiano. I want to do more. I feel like God's telling me that I need to do more. He's like, well, what does this look like? And so we put together, my dad and I put together some money and bought 40 filters. I sent these filters to Cristiano and I said, Cristiano, I want you to give these to your disciples. So that way, when they go home, they've got clean water. And then Cristiano, I want you to use these in your community to give to your church members. And the only thing they have to do to get one is they have to invite their neighbors to a Bible study. And so they started inviting neighbors to Bible studies. And over the next month, so from April 14th of last year till the end of May, I'm receiving these photos of people coming to Christ at these Bible studies subsequently because of this clean water. So that was my 40. And so I had 41 over there. And after seeing all these, I'm like, all right, there's something to water, gospel. And I'm not that smart, but there's other people doing this. So I started looking around. And to answer your question, last year we did a little over 1,000 filters. And we are on pace to do, our budget allows us to do 2,000, but as I tell people, the more funds we can raise, the more filters we can purchase, the more missionaries we can hire, and the more people hear about Christ. And so our goal is 2,000 this year, double it, but we'd like to do more.
And we will tell the listeners towards the end of the show how they can contribute in order to buy more and follow. But I would like the transparency on your website. I'm on your website right now, and on the Filter Project dashboard, you have it broken down as to adults, children, infants that have been helped, how many families, and the number of follow-up visits. And you have a map with little dots on it that show where they all are used. And for a lot of people in today's world that are skeptical of nonprofits and where's the money going, thank goodness for Doge, right? Finding all of our money. Then this is very smart and very, very transparent. So anybody that has any concerns about it, you address it right from the beginning. So again, that's on their website, thefilterproject.org, and under the Where We Work area. But I have a question about that, about where. Now, I know your contact was Cristiano, if I'm saying his name correctly. And so that makes sense to use your contact to go to wherever he is. But is this clean water problem? Africa gets a lot of attention from missionaries for a good reason. I'm not minimizing that whatsoever. But where else in the world does South America have this problem? Central America? Is it anywhere in the United States that has this same problem? And then where else overseas?
Yeah. So let's just be close to home here in America. All of our listeners here know that North Carolina suffered a major hurricane disaster, and not the Filter Project, but Sawyer Water Filter, which is owned by a gentleman named Dr. Avery, who is a Christian. And if you go to his website, sawyer.com, you can watch his testimony. And he says that he's never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. And so he is trying to help the water crisis. And so here at home, when emergencies happen, Sawyer jumps into action, and they actually supplied over 10,000 filters to the North Carolina area.
Wow.
What's his name again?
His name is Dr. Avery.
Avery.
Avery. Yeah, I was looking for he's got a book on his website that he just released about his story.
Okay. Thank you.
They do water filtration, they do insect repellent, and they do sunscreen. And,
so he's the same Sawyer of the Promethean insect repellent.
Yep.
Oh, love that stuff.
Yes, it's a great for your gear and your clothes.
Oh,
I use it
gosh.
over in Kenya when we're there.
I have actually seen ticks crawl up my leg and hit the barrier and jump off. Seriously,
It's good stuff.
I mean, it's amazing. Okay, anyway,
we digress. But so in Puerto Rico, when that hurricane hit a couple years ago, you saw all those bottles of water sitting on a tarmac. Well, Sawyer went in before that and donated a bunch of water filters everywhere. And so that's here at home. We're actually starting a new project at the end of April in Panama there. So we're going to bring some filters to a jungle coastal tribe there in April. One of our partners, which as my next part of my story of how we got to where we are, the Bucket Ministry, they are in Ciudad, Mexico, Ciudad Victoria, Mexico. There's other people who I've talked to who use the Sawyer filter, who are smaller, but they're in Vietnam and other places. So the water crisis is all over. And really, I believe clean water is the number one issue around the globe and will be the number one issue when a catastrophe happens, because we can live without food, but our bodies cannot live without clean water. And so it's crucial.
Yeah. Now, is this a full-time ministry position for you now? I mean, this is a lot, right? I mean,
I'm the kind of guy, and I was just, I get it from my dad, but when we do something, we're going to do it all the way. We're not going to do it halfway. And so I started this ministry as almost like a tent maker ministry.
Yep.
And as I started, which for your listeners, a tent maker is someone who has a regular job, like Paul, building tents. And then they also have a ministry that they're helping. And so that's the beginning of this. Bivocational. There you go. And that's how it started. But I was just wrestling with it, and I wanted this, and I felt like God was telling me and wanted the Filter Project to be more than just a lemonade stand. And so I actually quit my full-time job the beginning of this year in January to take this on full-time. And I believe that is what God wanted me to do. I felt the calling. I've never felt so much in God's will after quitting my job. I thought it was going to be this huge burden and I was going to be super stressed. Now, the financial part of it's still a little scary, but just the peace of knowing that this is where God wants me. It's where he wants my family. And seeing him work sometimes minute by minute, hour by hour, through the Filter Project, through clean water, has just been a blessing. And I don't ever want to turn back.
Oh, that's great. Now, is it, so you're on missionary support, essentially, is how you.
Yeah. So I had a donor, one of my major donors this year, who donated to my salary. And so every dollar that we raise, 80% of it goes into our international fund, and the other 20% goes in domestic, which this year is not funding me. It's not funding my lifestyle. It funds the technology, the CFO, the tax, the website, the marketing, and all that stuff to get
and all the stuff that it takes to run business.
Yeah. A lot of people there's a bad view out there that ministry and missionaries and pastors need to be poor, and that you should be starving for Christ, which some people do, and that's where God has them. But in order to run a successful ministry, you have to have paid employees. You can't do everything via volunteer and hope it works out.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
So I am the only paid employee of the filter project. My wife volunteers. My dad helps me with operations and finance, and my sister-in-law Samantha, she's our communication and marketing help. So that's my team.
Yeah,
I noticed the same last name on your team on your website. I said this is a family gig, except for one guy.
It's a family gig,
which is awesome. It really is, and I like your comment that we're not, we don't take a vow for poverty just because we're in ministry. However, in today's world, you got to be cautious with that because of the people that abuse it on the other end.
Yeah.
But we don't want to get on that track.
No, that'll take a whole nother episode to talk about that.
It's when you keep God first, he provides for us.
Yep. Amen.
When you keep God first, he provides for us. I got on that and then my brain just completely left. So it just seems too easy. I'm going to take Katie's word here, and it just seems too simple. I mean, it just does, Elliott, that you think, well, Sawyer created this wonderful device, and you can buy it for $29. We had to pay $50, but that's still, it's $50. It's one night out, and you are giving people life-saving resource for $50. And that is just, I can't hardly get my head around that, and to think the training of using it is minimal, right? So it's not like some other filtrations. I remember my question now while I was doing that. Explain to the listeners, and I've written stories on this, so I understand it, and John probably does, but the listener probably doesn't understand the difference between a water filter and a water purifier. Can you explain that to our listeners so they understand the importance of the filter versus the purifier?
Yeah, so there is a lot of different chemicals and devices that are doing what's called purification, and they're using reverse osmosis. They're using chlorine, chloride, fluoride, other kind of things like that to kill and eliminate the bacteria out of the water. What a filtration system does or device does is simply that. It filters the debris and bad bacteria out of the water. So this filter here uses, again, hollow microfiber technology. It looks like a cluster of tiny little white straws in there, and it grabs every particle that's 0.1 micron and above. So
that's small.
That's very small. Okay. The life straw does 0.2. So this works all the way down to 0.1. And so the water, again, I'll do the little demonstration here.
Wait. Show how dirty it is first. Slowly. You're too close. Right there. All right. That's how dirty it is. And he's fixing to. That's a good Southern frame.
They're fixing to.
He's fixing to squeeze it into his glass, and look how clean it is. Wow. So it doesn't just take the debris out. It doesn't go from brown to clear. That's not the only thing it does. That's perfect. Yeah. There you go.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Does it also capture viruses?
So I'm not exactly sure on the scientific part about a virus, but if the virus is bigger than 0.1, it will. The filter is not a desalination tool. So if there's salt water, it will not take the salt out. It'll just take the parasites and bacteria that would make you sick. Also, if there is like heavy metals like mercury or heavy chemicals in the water, it will not remove that either. So before we ever distribute a filter, we do an assessment and test the water sources in the area to make sure that the filter will do what we say it's going to do. Because the last thing we want to do is hand these out and people are still getting sick.
Right. That's a good point that I never would have thought of. Let's test the water that they're using first and see, well, there's uranium in the water. Can't help you there. Or there's mercury in the water, or there's There's
heavy fluoride. One thing that we deal with a lot in African communities and communities around the world is where there's a lot of volcanic rock. There will be heavy fluoride in the water, and nobody's come up with a portable, affordable device to get fluoride. You have to use reverse osmosis, which for all the fluoride people out there, it will not do that. But fluoride's not making people have bacterial issues. It's just having browning of the teeth, and then a lot of the skeletal bones will weaken from the fluoride.
Yeah, I think that the testing thing is such a great, I think, example to all of us, though, right? I think there's a lot of people with great ideas that, I've heard stories of African villages, say, being harmed. Essentially, these women are making clothes, and then people are donating tons and tons of stuff and putting people out of business, trying to be helpful. And so I think you bring up a great point, right? Doing your homework is a major part of being effective in ministry, that we actually learn what are the real issues, what are the real needs. So what kind of led you to that? Because obviously, you give that first filter away, and you're like, holy cow, this is amazing. And then you're probably inspired to go, I want to give it to a whole bunch more people.
Right.
But how did you make that jump from, hey, I'm giving one guy a filter, to I want to get to the point where we're testing water sources? Because that's not even really kind of in the same ballpark, right?
No,
I mean, that's a whole other.
I mean, I would say it's a God thing, but how we went from the 1 to the 40 to 1,000 and hopefully thousands this year is, I alluded to the fact that I'm not the smartest guy.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
The Three Stooges here.
Yeah.
There you go. Mo, Larry, and Curly. But I knew that somebody else had to be doing something out there with this device.
Yeah.
And so part of my discovery was, number one, wow, this crisis is huge. Number two, maybe there's some like-minded people out there that I could learn from what they're doing, so that way I could be successful, or the filter project could be successful. And so I went on the Sawyer Water website, and your viewers and listeners can go there and they can see a lot of different partners that they're working with. There were some humanitarian people who just wanted to bring clean water to people. There were some nuns who wanted to bring clean water. And then there was another ministry called the Bucket Ministry. Christopher Beth, out in Dallas, he was there. And I reached out to all of these different ones. And again, God guiding this whole thing through just me doing research. I believe that God blesses us with a shovel, but is not necessarily going to dig the hole for us. And so I started digging, and the humanitarian people were super nice, but they didn't want to have anything to do with telling people about Christ. Well, that's not what we're about. The nuns were really nice, but they had another way of telling people about Christ. And so that really wasn't, and they didn't have a lot of transparency. And so that wasn't it. So then I reached out to Chris, sent an email, and found out that, number one, he's working in Kenya. He uses a Sawyer water filter. He comes from a Baptist background, an evangelical, gospel spreading background. And he had some transparency. He had this system of tracking these things. And so, in all transparency, I didn't come up with this tracking system. I reached out to Chris, and over the last months, he has basically helped the filter project and mentored me and as a leader and our team to distribute these, track these, and form our team in Kenya. And so, whereas we use the same systems, we do a lot of the same stuff. We're obviously two separate organizations. And I'll tell your listeners about that, because I get a lot of questions. Well, why don't you just join with them? They're already doing it. Why are you doing it? Well, I had this same intrusive thought as well as my discovery period. And I called Chris and I said, hey, Chris, look, you're doing it. Maybe the filter project doesn't need to be a thing. Maybe I should just help you. And he said, look, man, I'm going to stop you right there. He goes, you heard a call from God to start this. He goes, I pray every day that there will be people who rise up and get the command to go out and do this. He goes, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. You have a unique set of skills. You have a unique sphere of influence. I want to help you get this off the road, which for people who have been in nonprofit or familiar with nonprofit, finding another nonprofit who's doing what you want to do, literally help you and give you the keys to the kingdom is unheard of. So Chris Beth has been a mentor of mine. We were emailing this morning at 4 a.m. and he has just been an awesome asset for the Filter Project. So, and again, in a long-winded way, that's how the Filter Project, went from just 1 to randomly 40 to now doing a very meticulously stepped process of assessing an area, which means that we go and literally count, our team goes and literally counts each household one by one. They test the water, and we also conduct church assessments. Because one thing that our kind of motto is we work where God's already working. So we partner, we're a parachurch organization. We partner with like-minded churches in the area who are preaching the gospel, not prosperity gospel, not works-based gospel, none of that. Pure, it's a gift, it's all grace, and it's only Jesus. And so we partner with these churches, and this is where our distributions happen throughout. And so after an assessment is completed, we do a demarcation and ticketing, which our missionaries go home to home. Each missionary team has 50 families that they're in charge of for this cycle. They give them a ticket, which we call the Ticket to Hope. They come to our distribution, which is a large group distribution. We show the family, number one, how to use the filter. We show them in front of it how to clean it. Then we do a gospel presentation. We have a partnership with the Jesus Film Project, who donates tablets and projectors to our team. We show a couple excerpts of the Jesus film, who Jesus was, what he did. And then we do a good old-fashioned altar call and ask people, who wants to give your life to Christ? And there is no quid pro quo on getting this filter, and we make that very clear to these people when we're giving them. You don't have to accept Christ. You can be a Muslim, you can be a witch doctor, you can be whatever. We don't care, because we believe that Christ will work through our missionaries and through the scripture that we're reading. And once these individuals give their life to Christ, they're prayed over, and all the recipients get anti-parasitic medicine, so a dewormer. They get a filter, they get a bucket, and then their data is intake from our missionaries. And we use an app called Survey 123, which was built by Sparrow, which is a nonprofit wing of Sawyer. Actually, Kevin, Dr. Avery's son, runs that. And we intake a lot of data. So census data, how many children are in your family, how many adults are in your family, the ages, where they go to church, how often they're sick, how much they spend on water, how much they spend on hospital and medication, and then they're sent on their way. And then following the distribution, about 7 days following the distribution, that same missionary team who ticketed, welcomed them to the event, are now visiting them at their home, where every recipient gets 3 follow-up visits over a 6 to 8 week period of time. So 7 days following a distribution, 2 weeks after the distribution, and then 3 or 4 weeks later after that one. And at this follow-up visit, which this is really where the magic happens of what we do, are these follow-up visits when we're inside of these families' homes. Our missionaries are checking on the filter, making sure the family knows how to use it. Number one, making sure they use it. They're cleaning it. And then they share the gospel through discipleship lessons. And another data intake point is taken. Again, the census information is taken, the medical is taken. But then the most important part is we do a spiritual assessment of the family or the individual that we're speaking to. And so what that looks like is it's a simple question. Are you a Christian? Yes or no? If they say yes, that goes into a series of questions confirming that they know what being a Christian is. Just because, like in America, you can walk into a Christian church anywhere in America and ask somebody if they're a Christian, and they'll go, yeah. And you're like, all right, well, what makes you a Christian? Well, I believe in Jesus. That's not what makes you a Christian. Well, I go to church. That's not what makes you born again. Well, I was baptized. That's not what makes you a Christian. It is a personal belief that Jesus died on the cross. He rose from the grave, took the burden of sin, and he's your Lord and Savior, and you invited him into your heart, and he is the Lord of your life. And so we work through those questions, and then we do a simple discipleship lesson on the identity of Christ and the identity of being a Christian. If they say, no, I'm not a Christian, then we do those same lessons. And then follow-up 2 and follow-up 3, depending on what happened at follow-up 1, the lessons and the discipleship progresses to baptism and then to building disciples and church membership and those things. So it's not just getting them to become a Christian. There's a discipleship and building them to become disciples for Christ, which is the end goal.
So is there a resourcing then done to the local church as well? I mean, because if assuming there's fruit from this, obviously who knows how much depending on the community, but so follow-up discipleship material that the pastor might use, or Bibles or whatever. Are you involved in that end?
Yeah. So so to sponsor a family, it's $55. That includes the anti-parasitic medicine, the bucket, the filter, and then pays our missionaries to do the 3 follow visits, because they are full-time missionaries Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 p.m.
Okay.
We also provide families with a Bible.
Okay.
We do that in multiple different ways. The cheapest way we can do is we have what's called a Wi-Fi box provided by the Jesus Film. It's basically an external hard drive, and it holds the Bible in many different languages depending on the area we're working in. And in Kenya, over 80% of all families have a smartphone. And so what we'll do is we will connect their smartphone to our Wi-Fi box, and they will download a copy of the Bible in their heart language to their phone. If they don't have a smartphone and can read, then we try our best to get a printed copy of the Bible into their hand. And if they can't read and don't have a smartphone, the last resort, just because it's expensive, it's about $25. We provide a small solar-powered audio Bible to this family that reads in their heart language, which most of them are Swahili. And so those are what we present to the family. As far as what we do for the church, we do not financially support the church, and that is on the front end. We let the pastor know that. Yep. Our goal is to build disciples and to point them to the church. And I joke and say it's the pastor's job to do a message on tithing. and so we just want to make sure that the people are going to church. Our missionaries at the follow-up visit will get the individual's cell phone number, and our missionary will actually reach out to that individual, inviting them to their church that they go to, which is in the community.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
And then
my first thought, I wonder if their cell phone bill's as high as mine is.
It's actually kind of interesting. In Kenya, you only have to buy the phone, and then you just pay for the SIM card, and it works. So it's really a one-time fee.
We're getting ripped off, Pete.
Yeah, we are really getting ripped off. I got my bill yesterday. I thought, you got to be kidding. It costs this much money.
Yeah, I have 5 smartphones on my bill.
That. And then you got to sell the kidney just to pay your phone bill. This is very fascinating to me, Elliott. It really is. The whole thing's fascinating. and you explain it very well. I'd like to ask a few personal questions now,
Yeah.
if I may.
Absolutely.
Because one of the things we do here at Christian Outdoors is we talk about what you do, but also your personal journey
Yeah.
in your faith. And you mentioned that you were raised in church, and but I'm curious to know your personal faith journey, because, and what I mean by that, and I explain it this way, and the listeners have heard this a million times, is it's not just your testimony; it's your whole journey,
Yeah.
as to how you came into relationship with Christ and how that's impacted you going forward. So, would you mind sharing that part of your life with us?
Absolutely. I'd love to. Love sharing my testimony. It's really a big reason of why the filter project even came about at the time it came about. So we'll just start at the beginning. Again, I was raised in church, good little Southern Baptist boy. I've got a picture of me in a clip-on tie in front of the steeple at Germantown Baptist Church in Germantown. And I I did what a lot of kids do, I think, felt the pressure and was baptized and gave my life to Christ when I was like 9 or 10. But there really wasn't a change in my life. And so I was I was Wednesday, Sunday, Sunday night, youth camp, choir. I was what you thought a Christian kid should have been. I wasn't a perfect kid. I liked to talk and I got in trouble in class, goofing off and stuff. But um, when I was 18, I was at a revival at our church and I was sitting with the youth, which was not like me. I usually sat with my parents. And I just felt God call me to him. I just felt this burden. And I walked up front to the stairs, and the pastor was like, well, what's going on? You know, like I was sitting on the stage last Sunday with them. Like, what are you doing, Elliott? I'm like, I want to give my life to Christ. And I was a mess. And so, right there, when I was 18, May 4th, 2008, I gave my life to Christ. And I think, like a lot of people's testimony, man, I was high on the horse. I went on a couple mission trips, was telling people about Christ, graduated high school, was in college. I went to University of Memphis, lived at home, and I turned 21 my junior year, moved out of my parents' house, and just kind of started living for the world. Kind of quit going to church for the most part through college. I still went just because my mom and dad would beg me. But after I graduated college, I was the guy who would come for Christmas, Easter, and Mother's Day, and that was kind of my relationship and my church. I just started living what I call my wilderness period. Um, I met my wife Katie during this time. We have two beautiful children, daughter Laurel and a son Grant. Laurel is 8, Grant is 6 now. I had several different jobs through this. I wasn't leading my wife as a Christian example like I promised in front of all my people at the wedding. I wasn't really, we weren't in church. I wasn't raising my children to know Christ. And so, really, for most of my marriage, I've been married going on 11 years this year. And most of our marriage was just doing whatever we wanted, living for the world, waking up late on Sunday, not spending time in the Word. And it was about 4 years ago. I felt the Holy Spirit really convicting me for not just raising my children to know Him. I think when we have children, it puts a lot of stuff in perspective. And for me, it was that. They go to Briarcrest Christian High School, which is a private school here in Memphis. And I was deathly afraid that somebody was going to invite them to church because they knew that we didn't go to church. And so I called my dad and was like, hey, want to start going to church. Where are y'all been going? And they said, well, we're actually going to go back to Germantown. They had tried several different churches. And so one Sunday I show up at Germantown again, and it was kind of nostalgic seeing all the people and that I'd seen growing up, a few more gray hairs and a few more wrinkles, mine included. But
I resemble that comment. I resemble that comment.
Well, I've got gray hair too, so it's not just you. And I started getting my family involved in church, and I just picked back up where I left off. You know, Jesus, God, He doesn't leave us. He doesn't. A lot of time, He's not just like waiting for us to get back. He's with us the whole time. I was a Christian. There's no doubt about that when I was 18. And He was working in ways and keeping me safe and protecting me in ways while I was running that I didn't know. And so I picked back up, started being discipled by our pastor, Matt Brown, just again through, I took him duck hunting, and he's like, hey, I bet you're good at sharing your story because you like to talk to people. And I was like, well, I've actually don't know how to share my story, and I don't know how to tell people about Christ. So from that moment, Matt started working with me on that. And then it was another book. And he's been discipling me. This is our 3rd year. And so that is my journey of coming to Christ, back to Christ. But I had a huge issue happen. And as I was following Christ and my life was kind of back on track personally, I was really trying to live for the Lord. I made a mistake and got on a TikTok video and kind of made a fool of myself and got canceled at my work. And I got fired from my job. I'd been working there for 7 years. I had a very good living. I had a very large book of business. And like that, it was all taken away from me. I was kicked out. I had a 2-year non-compete. I had no clients. And I'm the sole provider for my family. And so I was at a pretty dark spot there. And God really used that moment in time and that storm to really draw me close to Him. And sorry. And it was just my family, we got back on the right track. I didn't have really anything else to do. I didn't have a job. So it was my relationship with Christ, my relationship with my wife, and my relationship with my children. And for about 4 months looking for a job, I just grew leaps and bounds in my walk with Christ. And just because I think sometimes God, I know He wrecked me and brought me to my knees to reposition my heart to be able to hear His call. Because if that wouldn't have happened 2 years or a year and a half later in April, when I met him, I don't think that I would have heard that voice of God telling me to fix this. And so, for your listeners, if you're going through a storm right now, you might not know why. You might think, golly, this is terrible. No way that this is orchestrated. No way that, this is what my plan is. But when I got out of that storm and I'm able to look back on that. I'm so thankful for that storm because it secured me. And the Filter Project is why it is, because of my journey and all of that. And God gave me the ability to, my wife says that I've got the gift of gab. I never meet a stranger. I love meeting new people. And that is helping me tell people the story about the Filter Project and tell people about Christ. And now I'm able to, I kind of don't like to say I'm a missionary, but I'm in full-time ministry now. And I don't think I could be happier or be in a better place than that.
Oh, that's good. No, I appreciate you sharing your story. And I was thinking back to something you said earlier about, Matthew chapter 9, Jesus talks about how the fields are ripe unto harvest, but the laborers are few. And I just preached on that on Sunday, actually. the few previous verses, it talks about he was going village to village, and he was preaching the message of the gospel, and he was healing people. And so I think we see basically your ministry doing that it's meeting a very tangible need and saying, hears the message of hope at the same time. And I think a lot of Christians get one of those really good sometimes, right? They're like, preach Jesus, preach Jesus, preach Jesus, but people are hungry, people are thirsty. And then you have other organizations that just give away water, but don't give away Jesus. So, I commend you in building a very biblical, Christ-centric model, because unfortunately, I think a lot of ministries we see don't necessarily meet both sides of that, the needs in the human experience and the spiritual needs in the heart of man. Now, was that part of the dream all along, or do you think that's kind of been birthed out of the discipleship process that you've gone through as well?
I would say that it was kind of birthed out of that because, again, Cristiano didn't need discipling. He's a pastor. He's got a church. And so I just saw the need of, I want to get this guy clean water. And then through God's story and through my story, it turned into, man, I got a burden for the lost now. I've got a burden that I really don't care if people get clean water, just to be honest with you. We're all going to die. I'm going to lunch later today. I could get in a car crash. And no matter how much clean water you get, no matter how many bowls of rice you can give people, no matter what, if they don't have Christ, what's the point of even living? And so, as you alluded to, Christ's ministry, when he healed the blind or fed the 5,000, it was meeting a physical need that pointed them to Christ. Yep. And so the feeding of the 5,000, the disciples thought, wow, this is impossible. There's no way we can do it on this little loaf, this little couple fish and loaves of bread. There's no way. Well, that's kind of how I see the Filter Project. Yeah. It seems crazy. It seems wild trying to, it was wild to give 50 people filters. Yeah. And now it's wild to think that we're going to do 2,000 and 3,000. But God's bigger than all of that. He's got 1,000 cattle on the hill. I mean, it's all his. And so as long as we continue to work and follow in his footsteps and follow his guidance and just stick to our values of sharing Christ no matter what, then I believe there's going to be a miracle that happens.
Yeah, that's great.
Amen. Amen. So, Elliott, we're kind of at our time limit now. So let's tell the people how they can get involved. On your website, thefilterproject.org. Right. There is a link called Get Involved. And you have on there several different levels. One is be a prayer partner, which is important. And then join an expedition, become an influencer, host a fundraising event, and donate. We're not going to go into all these in detail. The listeners can go there and find it. But if I just want to do something, it says here, if you give $53, then it will provide a household with one filter, and a public gift of any size goes directly to purchasing filters, buckets, and daily supports. So explain, say a one-time gift versus a monthly gift of the $53.
Yeah. So that actually needs to be changed. It's $55, but 53, 50, 55, $10, whatever. But for $55, that sponsors a family, and it's a one-time fee. And that goes to, again, purchasing a filter, a bucket, the anti-parasitic medicine for the family, and then the 3 follow-up visits and technology by our missionaries. And so if you give $55, one family will get taken care of for 1 million gallons or 20 years.
Okay.
But as we know, though, we're on donations. And so you can actually sign up for monthly donations. And so $55 a month, which helps us kind of budget out a little bit better. Or you can give $10,000 and just take 10,000 divided by 55. And that's how many families you'll help.
Right. Right, and you have that when you click the donate button, listeners, then there's a form to fill out and then options that you can do for donations. And it's pretty self-explanatory. They'll take credit cards and debit cards. You can do it monthly, one time. There's a drop down arrow there, weekly, fortnightly. There's a good word, which means every 2 weeks for those people who are not British. A fortnight is every 2 weeks, monthly, quarterly, and semi-annually. Fortnightly. Wow. That's a good one. I don't think I've ever seen that on the website.
Maybe we need to change that so people know.
Yeah, bi-weekly or but, wow, I like that though. I like that. You're really challenged the intelligence of your givers with that word.
Well, we're just hoping that they click it thinking it's cool. So
Yeah, that's right. Just leave it. So leave it.
there you go.
But it is a very good program that you're providing for your people. As you said so well, and I'm going to say this in conclusion, it's not just bringing clean water to people, which is very, very important. We're not minimizing that at all. And you're not using it, but it is a tool in which you can then present the gospel of Christ to people who are in desperate need of this, I can't say the word, of the saving grace of Christ. The Filter Project with Elliott Stoval and his team. Elliott, where are you on Facebook and Instagram if you are? And again, it's thefilterproject.org, but how are you on social media so people can then follow you and see what's going on?
Yeah. So again, we try to keep it simple. We're on Facebook and it's The Filter Project. And then Instagram, it's The Filter Project.
Wow.
And so
yeah, all of that.
Yeah, that was another thing. We were lucky that we didn't have to buy out any domains or anything. So
I didn't think of that when I was buying domains.
Yeah, the Filter Project. For Instagram, it's actually the _ Filter Project, one word. But if you just look the Filter Project, you'll find it.
Okay. Elliott, do you have any closing words?
And just thank y'all for allowing me to come and tell my story. My goal is to tell the story for people who can't tell their story and to raise awareness and just to run this ministry. So thank y'all for having me. Thank you to your listeners for listening. And I just urge them just to pray for the Filter Project. Number one, our missionaries. Number two, the recipients of these filters. And then number three, for my team back home that will lead this in a Christ-honoring way. So thank you all.
Absolutely. Elliott Stoval, the Filter Project, and I'm Pete Rogers, the host, with John Goodwin, who is co-hosting today on Christian Outdoors Podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.